Hello and good evening, everyone, and welcome to the third Kubernetes Users Group Philippine Meetup here at the AWS office. So today I will be joined by Sir Chris. I'm Vince and will be your host for today's event. So yeah, it's great to see a lot of turnout compared to the last event. Now, if you remember correctly, we were in the middle of a typhoon. So fortunately today the weather is a bit good. So a lot of people have turned out. And also a lot of familiar faces. And I've noticed that a lot of the people in the audience are fairly young. So if I may gauge the demographics of the audience, who among you guys, a raise of hands, who among you guys are currently as students? Oh, most of you are students. Wow. So, anong subject nag-request sa inyo? Hindi, joke lang. So, thanks once again for coming and once again, I will be introducing Kubernetes since a lot of you, I would assume, is fairly new for the community. So Kubernetes users, K8SUG stands for Kubernetes Users Group. And fortunately for this meetup, we are fortunate enough to be joined by an event partner, which is Big Mind. So a round of applause for them for providing us with it and being also our event partners. Later on, may ipapamigay sila association. And once again, we also would like to thank AWS for once again helping us, providing us with the event and being a consistent partner for the K8 users group, especially in supporting the tech industry in the country. So a round of applause for AWS. Okay, so just to give a brief of introduction with K8 users group for those who are new. Oh, by the way, pala, if you guys could also have your own photos, you can upload it in LinkedIn. You can also share it to us through this link so that we can also include it later on when we post you within our LinkedIn group so that we can also include you and promote you within our page. Okay, I'll give you time to take a scan QR. All right. So we at Kubernetes Users Group, we are very passionate about Kubernetes technologies, and our mission is to accelerate the Kubernetes adoption. We're learning from each other and sharing the best practices. So Kubernetes Users Group spans globally, and a side note, last September, Miss Kay Alvarado, one of our lead at the back, she pioneered this group and started the K8 Users Group Philippines. So also a round of applause for Miss Kay for providing us with the environment to learn Kubernetes and interact with people who are also passionate within the environment, within Kubernetes. And for today, we will be having two topics. So the first topic will be medyo nabaliktad, will be later on by Renz Angelo Livelo, which is reminding the gaps, exposing risk from missing and misconfigured network policies, and from our event sponsors themselves. Their topic will be entitled "CD in the Wild: Solving Real-World Problems" by Adam Liu. Um, so again, these are our main sponsors for the event, just to acknowledge them and to give you a brief background of the leads of the team. So the main Kubernetes users group is based in Singapore and they are usually led by three of these people. So for those who have been extensively using Kubernetes, Yong Kang He per se, it must have been familiar sa inyo. He was the one spamming a lot of ads in Code Cloud and Kubernetes users group. And the guy is very passionate with K8s in general. For upcoming events. So the K8 users group meetup isn't only limited within the Philippines. There are also synchronous events from other countries. And it is also led by several leads who are also passionate about Kubernetes. And just to give a quick introduction of the Cubes Program, So since a lot of the people here are probably students, I would assume some of you may be foreign, but within the concept of certifications, right? So certifications are practically exams that we take. It might be a quiz type of exam, a hands-on exam, and when you pass that exam, it will validate your competency within a certain specialty. Like for example, in Kubernetes, we have 5 different kinds of exam, and if you pass those exams, you will receive the actual recognition for the certification. And the great thing about the Kubernetes exam is if you were able to pass all 5 of the exams, you could apply for the Q-Astronaut program. So they will give you a jacket and you will be part of the global group of people who have successfully finished all exams. And it will also, it's more like a flex also. So yeah, it will verify. It's basically, it's kind of, you can imagine it like a board exam in Kubernetes. And in the Philippines, actually, a good news, last meetup, we're already familiar with Romer. Romer Cablao was here during the first meetup. He introduced the astronaut program to us. And as a good news, we were also joined by another astronaut recently, which is Sir Francis Lanz Arzalon. Hopefully in the future, we could also meet him. We could also invite him in our meetup. So maybe someday, if you're passionate to pursue Kubernetes, you can also be part of the Cluster in the Philippines. Uh, so we have also like promotions codes that you could guys check out later on if you want to apply for discounts within the different kinds of code cloud access certifications. And recently, we're approaching the Black Friday sale. So there, you can also monitor the Linux Foundation for another discounts that you guys could check out for further discounts for different kinds of exams that you would like to take. Aside from the cultural program, there is also another type of program called the astronaut program. So basically, it's kind of a similar concept, but within the AWS. So AWS itself also holds their own certifications across different kinds of domains. And recently, there are 2 new certifications: the AI practitioner and machine learning engineer. So if you also finish all of these certifications from AWS, you will be also recognized in an astronaut program and you will receive the famous golden jacket of AWS. So again, we are also always passionate to have new members within the community. So if you guys would like to later on volunteer as a speaker, a sponsor, or actually a volunteer within in general,
Hi
you
Philippines mà, kaya jadi ako event.
oh, sorry, as long as you're taking a picture, allow you to take a picture. All right. And lastly, you may follow us through these social media links to be updated for the future meetups as well as the other programs that we may have. All right, so without further ado, allow me to introduce our first speaker. So our first speaker for today is an experienced site reliability engineer. And also he is one of the community leads of the Kubernetes users group. He is both a certified Kubernetes administrator and a certified Kubernetes security specialist, making him a trusted expert and in Kubernetes operations and security, whilst also being a pivotal figure in the local Kubernetes community. You might have heard of him or might have worked with him before. He is going to deliver a topic entitled Minding the Gaps, Exposing Risks from Missing and Misconfigured Networks Policies. Let's give a warm welcome to Renz, Angelo, and Livelo.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm Renz. I'll just be sharing about this simple topic around network policies for Kubernetes. Um, for today or for tonight, I will be putting emphasis on why network policies are important. I hope I can also show you a demo and help you visualize what an attacker can do on a cluster if ever they compromise a pod. So there. But more importantly, hopefully we can help or I can help with best practices. So we'll uncover some strategies to close those gaps that and add another layer of security control in our cluster. So yeah. So I think this is our third meetup already. So on our first two meetups, we've already heard how Kubernetes has become the backbone of modern infrastructure. But before that, I think Lance or Vince mentioned earlier about the demographics of the attendees. So for those who are new, um, Kubernetes is an open source software that basically makes it easy for us to deploy and scale our application on the cloud or even at on-prem. So yeah, it's a very powerful tool. Um, we've also heard how Kubernetes has become a powerhouse for modern application and deploying your applications. And it's important to highlight its capabilities like automated deployment, management and scaling of containers applications. And finally, just to make a point, Kubernetes make it easy for some enterprise or for enterprises apps to have greater scalability and be flexible, portable, and more productive. So, yeah. So with this power, I think we're already familiar with this one. Great power comes great what? Yes, great attack surface. So, um, even the um, so for Kubernetes, actually, it's a very interconnected, or its network is interconnected. So it basically allows connection between pods and namespace by default. It's actually good in terms of usability and simplicity in terms of connections. However, it also opens up our cluster for any potential exploitations. And and you know what? These risks don't come from uh, sophisticated zero-day attacks or any state-sponsored hackers. So this is instead this come from the gaps that we leave open in our cluster. So what are those? Just to name a few. Um, vulnerable images, um, over permissive roles, service accounts. Um, just I think the most what you call this popular hacking incident with desktop started because of an insecure Kubernetes dashboard. And tonight we're going to discuss about network policies, whether it's missing or misconfigured on our cluster. So So, based from a report by Red Hat for this year's State of Kubernetes Security Report, a whopping 90% of organizations who are using Kubernetes have reported misconfigurations that left them vulnerable to attacks. So that says a lot. Um, so from last week, from Sir JP's presentation, he mentioned about what's wrong with the defaults of the Kubernetes. So for this is sorry, it's kind of an addition to that. So for Kubernetes network, by default it allows traffic to flow freely between pods and over um, across namespaces basically. So it makes it easy for us to this. It makes it easy for us to get up and running or get Kubernetes up and running. But again, it is also a opportunity or it also opens up a lot of opportunity for malicious adversaries to do malicious things on our cluster. So again, by default, it prioritizes over security, leaving our clusters vulnerable, and that's where the network policies come into place. So network policies, they define who can talk to, or who can talk to, for example, network policies define or control the communication between pods. So it can help in blocking threats and ensuring secure and compliant traffic flow. So for those who are familiar with defense in depth, network policies is another layer of defense that we can employ or we can implement on our cluster. So network policies, it is a fundamental element of zero trust model in Kubernetes. And one thing that I can highlight here is that it won't totally prevent any it won't prevent any attacks, but at least it can contain the attacker. Let's say they compromise a pod and there's a configured network policy. It is the network policy can help contain the scope of the attack. So they won't be able to jump from one pod to another, or let's say exfiltrate data. So so um So for Kubernetes network policies, you can think of it as like a firewall on your cluster. So it works on the layer 3 and layer 4. And later on, we can deep dive on how you can configure network policy in your cluster. So this is a common diagram here wherein um, on the database namespace, there is a MySQL pod that is protected by a network policy that only allows backend pod from the backend namespace and forbids other pods to connect to it. And as you can see here on the right-hand side, it also avoids any outgoing traffic to the internet. So later on, we're going to have a demo, just a quick demo on how we can implement this kind of network policy in our cluster. Um, for this part, we'll explore some realistic scenarios that highlight the consequences of having misconfigured or missing network policy on the cluster. So this example illustrate how attackers can exploit these gaps on our setups. So one common action that an attacker can do on our cluster if there is no network policy is unauthorized database access. So for this scenario, I'd like you to imagine that there is a microservice, a 3-tier microservice application that includes a front-end pod, a back-end, and a database. However, the database is on the same namespace as the front end and back end, and there is no network policy to forbid any communication between the three pods. So, what went wrong here, or what could possibly go wrong here, is if an attacker compromised the front end pod with a known vulnerability and use it as a foothold to actually perform data dumping and query sensitive customer data directly from the database pod. After an attacker dumps the database data, they can actually go ahead and exfiltrate exfiltrate sensitive data to the internet. So let's say I have a server on I have my own server, it's a malicious server, and there is a listener on my server, and I'll just have to transfer that data or that data dump from the cluster to my server. So it is possible if there is no configured network policy that won't allow egress traffic from leaving out the or from leaving any cluster. So what went wrong here? Yeah, the lack of egress restrictions enabled a compromised pod to exfiltrate sensitive data to an attacker controlled server. So you can see here some mitigation steps wherein again you can just have to configure egress policies is restricting bots communication. So you only need to allow egress traffic to specific IPs or domains. Lastly, this one is kind of scary, which is when an attacker tries to move into the Kubernetes cluster or on your network. Let's say a developer deployed a pod with a vulnerability. Again, the attacker was able to exploit that vulnerability. And without network policies, they would be able to scan the network, look for other vulnerabilities, and use those vulnerabilities to um, move laterally on the cluster. So for this one, a mitigation is to apply a default deny all network policy for the namespace and explicitly allow required communication only. Right. So, yeah, I'll proceed with the demo. But before that, I just want to make a disclaimer that we'll be skipping the razzmatazz of like exploiting the pod. So for this one, what I want you to take note of is the demo would be um the demo would assume that I already have a compromised pod, and I just want to show you what an attacker can do and how are they going to do it. So but before that, I want you to see the anatomy of a network policy. So for those who are already familiar with Kubernetes, you can see here the familiar required fields, just the API version and the metadata, which contains the name of the network policy. You can also, but I want you to focus on the spec because it has all the information needed to define the network policy or the rules on the given namespace. So for this one, for the pod selector, just help identify to which pods the network policy will apply to. So for this one, since it doesn't have any contents, this will apply to all network on the namespace where this will be applied. Right? For this, you also have the policy type, which is ingress. And you can also include egress policy type here, which is for outgoing traffic. So this one is for incoming, the next one would be for outbound traffic. And here, just below it, you can see the rules for the ingress. So for this, the path selector would identify what pods would be allowed to connect to the pods on the namespace where this will be provisioned. Right? The same goes for the namespace selector. So it would allow traffic from this namespace to the pods on this namespace. So basically, you segment the connection, or you whitelist those who can connect, or those who can connect to the pods. Right. You can also define an external outreach. So this is particularly useful for external APIs to which your cluster connects to. And just down below, you can also see the protocol in the port. So you can only connect to the pods on port 80, which is the protocol for HTTP for servers. So there. So right now, my environment is like this. So I have a database spot with a MySQL instance, and it allows connection basically from anywhere. So it's a network free way. Everyone can contact anyone. So the backend can contact the DB can contact the backend. They go on. So, and on the right hand side, it can also connect to the database. So that is kind of concerning. vanished because you don't want the database to connect to external or to connect to the internet. And this can be a this can be a vulnerability or a way for an attacker to do data exploitation if this is not addressed. This is how we want my environment to be after I do the demo. So we need to just allow the backend pod to the database pod and make sure that the database pod won't connect to my malicious server. So, eh, ano ba yan? So for this one, this is Killer Coda, just a playground for Kubernetes. So you might want to give it a try. So it's free, but you can also have like a paid subscription. So enough of that. All right. So let's just check the pods that I deployed on this cluster. So I can do get pods dash A. So it's basic. I have a backend pod on the backend space, MySQL pod, and then I also have an entire pod on the front end namespace. So what I want to do now is, as an attacker, let's assume that I already compromised a pod. Wait, wait lang guys. So for this one, okay, pretty good.
Sigawan ka na lang ako. Singing ka soon, basta. Alin po? Yan. Ay, dito lang ako. Sorry. Ay, sorry dito. Ito yung yan, better. Pa-upwards kasi pa-upward. Hello? 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 Sorry po. Bakit? Okay no? Sorry guys for the difficult. Hawakan na. Eh, right. Nawala na ako. So let's assume that I have compromised a pod or an attacker compromised a pod on the front end namespace. So just for the sake of demo, I named it attacker pod. So I'll go ahead and wait lang guys. Alright. Okay, let's go. Sorry po, pwede po makisaksak po ng laptop. My choice din. Yeah. Okay, sir. Yes, busy. Yes, busy. Tatlong charger. Hey guys, sorry about that. So for this one, let's assume that I have compromised the pod and the front end namespace. So what I'm going to do is to connect to that pod. And for this one, let's assume that the attacker also gets a hold of uh, mismanaged secrets for the database. So, right. Mm, sorry. So there. So
Do you need the mouse?
hmm,
Do you need the mouse?
that is sana. Yeah, there. So let's assume I have access to the attacker pod. What I would like to do is to dump the database data. So let's assume that the attacker already did network mapping. They already found out the IP address. The attacker also has the database credentials from mismanaged secrets. Let's go ahead and try to um, let's try to query the database. Oh,
Need the mouse.
lumaki. Sorry.
Can
So for this one, what I'm going to do is to just dump or just try to get the contents of the database and try to export it or transfer it to my malicious server hosted in another cloud provider. So I just want to show the database and then I just want to get the contents of testdb and basically dump it to a file. What I'm going to do is so before that, so this is the effect of not having network policy that would just take the connection between the front end to the database. So as you can see, the front end pod or the attacker pod is able to do MySQL queries in the database pod and the MySQL pod. Which should not be the case. So yeah, what I'm going to do now is to just dump the contents there. So let's just check if there's content. So I already have the details of the database and basically just want to transfer this one to transfer this to my server on the GCP. So this is my web server. So what I just want to do is SSH here. Here. Alright. Let's just wait for it to load. Um, what I'm trying to show here is that if there is no network policy, restricting connection to the internet, I would be able to transfer the data on the pod to my server here in GCP. So this is connected via SSH. All right, so I'll just add a listener here. Let's add a listener here. So what this does is it's waiting for a connection from the pod. And what I'm going to do now is just dump the database information to my oh, so I just set that to dump the file. It should come in any minute now. Right. So and now we should have the dump here. And let's just confirm if I already have it. And so it's just a basic, a demo on what an attacker can do. If there's no restricting network policy. So basically, the attacker pod was just able to query the contents of the database and then just transfer it over the internet. It should not be the case. So what we're going to do now is to apply the policy and make sure that it won't allow any outgoing traffic for that namespace. Okay. So sorry. Search by the one. Ah, sorry. Sorry, wait. Ay, why? Ay, wait. Hindi working. Let's see. Hmm? Take too much time.
Yeah, 7:25.
Correct. So, so if you look here, the content of the heuristic policy is so this will be applied to the database namespace. So this will apply to pods that has the labels of database. So all pods that has that label would have this policy. And basically what it does is it will allow ingress traffic from pods on the backend namespace. So as you can see, I have indicated here the pods and the namespace for the backend. And it would only allow traffic from ports K306, which is for querying database.
Alright. So just to cut it short, so this policy would have to address the vulnerability or the threats that you can have if you don't have any policies on your network. So we'll go back to that if we have time, but just having to proceed with some parts of the presentation. So some best practices, but before that, despite the importance of network policy, these are often overlooked. So whether it be too complex or um, admins are not aware, and some tends to push back if their cluster has been running for a while now. So it would be like very challenging or tough to set up network policies. But the nature of network policies wherein you can just apply it to a particular set of pods and namespace can actually help. And you just have to apply it one policy at a time until you reach uh, your goal of securing your Kubernetes workloads. So there's also a common misconception wherein it may affect performance. Um, yeah, so it's still not true, but some tends to push back because of that. And some best practices here. So you can deny all ingress and egress traffic to a particular pods. This basically place your pods on a lockdown. This is particularly useful for establishing a strong security baseline if you follow a zero trust model. So you also need to control outbound traffic. So as I was trying to demonstrate earlier, we don't want the contents or the sensitive data to go through the internet. Alright, so another one is to regularly review and update policies. And you can also, for the challenges that you encounter when implementing network policies, you can actually use some tools to help in terms of creating and enforcing network policies automatically. So you can have it automated. Yeah, you can use tools. So a few reminders, network policies are stateful. So once it connects to whatever it has to connect to, it can actually receive the incoming reply. Um, Another one is network policies typically provided by the CNI plugin. So, but most of the CNI plugins actually supports network policy, so it's okay. Another one is there are no explicit deny rules, so it may be hard for some to implement network policies. So here, security by design with security by reaction. So I encourage everyone to mind the gaps on their Kubernetes cluster, and actually that's all. So do you have time to yeah. Okay, so I just skip the demo. Alright, sige. I don't know what happened there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Time.
Alright, thank you very much, Renz, for that wonderful back introduction. I hope you guys were able to gain something and listen attentively later on. Some of the topics that he was able to discuss will actually, or may not appear within the community. So I hope you have listened carefully. So once again, this is at the point of our topic where we'll give you guys an opportunity to ask questions for Renz. It might be any questions related to the topic or anything that might have it or something that you can do right now and you want Ren's advice. So I'll give the floor to you. So if you just raise your hand and I can talk to you for some questions.
Okay, anyone? Okay.
Work? But it's too late now. Hindi siya nag-work. Ba't ngayon nag-work?
Yeah. Hi, Renz.
Hello.
Yeah, I'm Mitch. I represent Cornell organization. It's a blockchain technology, one of the blockchain technology. Um, to be honest, this is really new to me, this network policy. So just a question, being one of the practitioner of this space, the network policy is pretty. How will you encourage the students here inside? What are the careers that offers to them?
Alright. Like,
Thank you. For me, just a little bit of background. I work as an SRE, a site reliability engineer. So if you'd like to pursue a career related to Kubernetes, there's actually a lot of careers that you can go into. So we have DevOps engineers. We also have DevSecOps, which has a touch of security, cloud engineers and so. So it's a very, very good field. It's a booming industry, or it's a very good technology to get into as early as now. So it's very much utilized in the industry. So if I have to make a suggestion, you can go into you can study Kubernetes as early as now and go from there. And I hope we're able to answer the question. Anyone else from the audience who would like to ask Renz a question regards to this topic or Kubernetes in general? Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Hello, sir. Good evening. So my question is, so for the example, I know that you're giving us a simple example.
Yes.
We can visualize how network policies can help us protect, can protect us from security. But in real world, of course, our infrastructure is complex. So what are your recommendations for us to check in case our infrastructure has still threats? Like we already implemented network policies, but we are not sure if we fully, or at least majority of our infrastructure is already covered by the network policies that we implemented.
Alright. So to answer that, actually use tools like Cilium and Calico Tigera. You can deploy it on your cluster, and what it does is it intercepts traffic from your cluster, and it kind of interprets the traffic and help you create a policy and your cluster. But I just want to also highlight or emphasize that network policy would not protect you from network policy alone would not protect your cluster from malicious adversaries. So it's just a one layer of security, and you need to complement it with other security with other like security tools to make your security posture a little bit stricter. So what you can do, from the top of my head, you can use like tools like Falco, for detecting malicious activities on the cluster. You can also have this one is a bit like too complex or may not be like applicable for everyone, but in- it's a very recommended is to create your own like implement policy as code. So using OPA for things like that. So again, network policy is just one layer of security. So for you to actually, especially if you have a very what is very big security appetite, so you need to complement it with other security tools.
So to make your cluster more secure. I'll just give a nice yeah, so I'm super frustrated. Okay, good guy.
All right, thank you very much, guys.
We have a last question from Renz.
Friends, last question from our
additions to in order for better security and make us feel assured that we are doing the right process. So to answer that, it would depend on your understanding of your own infrastructure. So you start from there. So you need to not really fully map out how applications connect with one another, but you need to get a understanding of what would be like your priority in terms of protecting, like if there is any sensitive data, so you can focus on those resources. Um, yeah.
Did that answer your question? Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, can we entertain one last question from the audience? I'll ask now. Okay, so okay. Just a clarification, Renz. Someone want to know what's the downside of automating this process. So what do you suggest could be a potential downside or cons in terms of implementation compared to other existing processes?
In terms of automation, basically we implement automation or we integrate automation in the process to limit human error. But what I would suggest is even if it is a policy created by a tool, you still need to verify it yourself just to make sure that it won't break any connectivity in your cluster. Because for security and what you call this, you need to find the perfect balance between security and making sure that your application remains available to whoever needs it. So even to going back, even if you have like policies created by automation tools, you can also like double check, triple check, just to make sure that it won't break the system. But it rarely happens, but it won't hurt to check.
All right. If you have more questions to Renz later on, I will give you an opportunity to have a networking session, and you can ask him your questions. Okay, to introduce our next speaker, they're actually from our event partners, Big Mind. Just to give a quick description. So our second speaker is a software architect at K. He brings over 20 years of experience in designing and supporting software networks and infrastructures for organizations ranging from startups to multinational corporations across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. With his expertise in microservice architectures and cloud-native solutions on Kubernetes, he has contributed to industries such as healthcare, e-commerce, financial services, telecommunications, and more. Today, he'll be delivering a talk entitled CD in the Wild, Solving Real-World Problems, sharing his approach to designing robust enterprises. Let's give a warm of applause to our speaker, Mr. Adam Lesiuk.
Good evening. Hello. Hello. Hi there. Good evening, and welcome to this Kubernetes group for tonight in the Philippines. So, yeah, what we're going to talk about tonight is continuous deployment and some real-world scenarios and situations that we have that come into this. So, let's start. We'll get there. Okay. So a little bit about ourselves. So this is we've developed a tool called K8, which works for continuous deployment on Kubernetes. The idea is that we just had some questions talking about automations. So with continuous deployment, what we're doing is we're hooking in at the end of the build chain. So you'll be checking in your code, everything being built, and then what we're handling now is the deployment and the final piece when we push the code out and putting it into deployment and into live. So this is just some areas that we cover, but we'll let you come back to that on a slide later. So the first thing we need to do is, well, why does continuous deployment matter? So as we said, continuous deployment lets you streamline workflows. So what you're looking at doing is building your code, checking it in, and getting it into the environments as quick as possible. So with Kubernetes, what we've got is some automated deployments that are scalable, but then it starts to bring in extra complexities. So what we're going to look at tonight then is 3 challenges. So progressive delivery, multi-cluster, multi-cloud deployments. So that's whether it's across clients or even whether it's hybrid internal and cloud environments. And then finally, continuous deployment at scale. Okay, so first challenge, progressive delivery. So progressive delivery is where we're looking at various scenarios that we need to bring different applications out so we can test it. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to manage our traffic across different versions. So we might have one version of one cluster, one version of another, or even in different namespaces inside the same cluster. The challenge is also then is sort of like, now, if we break it, how do we come back? We need to do quick rollbacks to make sure that we can then, sort of like we've made our mistake, we've pushed it out, right, we can get back and get our systems back up and running. And that's trying to keep our downtime to as little as possible. So what are the practical tips that we've got for progressive delivery? So first part is sort of like we need to actually get our traffic between 2 different copies of our application. So we need some traffic management on that. So we might be using the ingress, which is Nginx, or we might be using sort of like higher levels above that, like a service mesh like Istio, or we're broadcasting it across multiple different clusters across the cloud. So, and from there, then we need to manage more complex deployment strategies. And other tools that we can do is like outbound rollouts, just to give us the way that we can actually help and make this life a bit easier to do. So then we mentioned automatic rollbacks. So what do we need to do about those? So what we want is some way that we can trigger our rollback. Maybe we want some metrics that we're doing. So a common one might be that sort of like suddenly we notice that hits to our site have gone down. We're looking at Google Analytics or something on those platforms, and suddenly we know at this time of night we always have 100,000 visitors. Now suddenly we've got 100. Okay? Something's obviously wrong there. Again, it might be payment metrics or other things like that. And then again, like we say, then we've got our monitoring. So we may be looking internally into the system, using Grafana, Prometheus, and other tools to give us a view and let us see what's happening and look at any influences and any impacts and issues that are occurring. So, moving on to us. So what we've got within our product is sort of like a nice, easy way of helping you make some of these deployments. Now, it's not always that simple straight away. So what we've got is a couple of different deployments and strategies that you may want to use. So we've got AB, which is our traditional 2 copies. We may have a blue-green deployment, where we're looking at different versions, or we're bringing our new version alongside our old one. Canary, where we're going to gradually shift our traffic across as we go. Highlander, which is also called a recreate. And then finally our rolling and ramp deployments. So ultimately what we're talking about is something that simplifies those progressive delivery. So where we can sort of like manage all of these things, do our quick rollbacks, and we can absolutely test and push our deployments out as simple as possible without too much effort. Okay. So then again, so like it's all great that we're using Kubernetes, but we want to increase our resilience now. So the whole point is that eventually we're going to want to deploy across multiple clusters, and those clusters might be all in AWS. There might be some on AWS, some in private data centers. So what we need to do is to look at that challenge in itself. So again, this is somewhere where it can get complex quite quickly. Because what we're trying to do at the end of the day is push our code out across multiple different places. So we need to ensure that we've got consistent configuration and that we can get our communication across to our clusters and push it out as quick as possible. What we also have to do is to make sure that we get the same compliance in clusters. So when we're pushing our network policies, are we pushing that again at the same time to everything? And our last challenge and part of this is sort of like managing our resources and our networking. And then finally, obviously, costs always come into it. So when we're looking at multiple clusters, things start to get a bit more complex. Because now suddenly, when we're looking at our application, we can't just look into the logs of our single application and see everything that's going on. What we've got to do is actually pull those logs back out to an external system. So this is where things like sort of like Grafana and Prometheus, again, putting those out to an Elk stack or a Flintstone stack, where what we can do is get all of the logs. So we've got sort of all of our front end pods, whether they're located on cluster A, B, or C, and we can consolidate those logs and we can start to see whether we've got any common errors that are occurring across everything, or maybe we've just got errors that are occurring on one cluster, and maybe we need to change our bigger picture of our routing just to ignore that one. Again, sort of like then we talked earlier about security policies. So once again, we've got to get consistency across our network. There's no point applying our policies to sort of like just one of our clusters, and then we suddenly left the other two clusters open to the wild. So again, the tools out there to help you use this, such as like Open Policy Agent, to help you roll out and to give you a central place to configure and pushing those policies out across multiple different clusters. Then once again, we talked about then sort of like networking. So there's sort of like within Kubernetes, we've got things like our ingresses, maybe Nginx or something like those. Now we can start to introduce a layer above that, which is a service mesh. And then what we do there is we bring all that traffic into the service mesh, like Istio or Linkerd, and then we allow those to push the traffic out to everything else around us. So that way we get to be able to bring it in, distribute it, and we can start to have a system that doesn't have a primary or a secondary. We've got an always-on solution across all of our sites. And then obviously, once we start scaling things up, we can easily, very quickly lose track of our costs. Once we start spinning this up all over the place, maybe we've got our nodes set to expand and automatically sort of like add additional nodes, then we've got to start tracking everything that's going on across multiple different environments. So what we do is we concentrate on the deployment side of things. And deploying to sort of like multiple clusters across different environments is just exactly the same as setting up for a single one. We just have groups that allow you to click, assign it out, and from a DevOps point of view, that also gives us the ability that we can actually add additional clusters later. So we can set up our pipelines all within Git, and then we can just add additional servers. So we're now branching out. We've got customers in the Philippines. We've had our clusters here for ages. Now suddenly we've got a few more customers in Europe. So we want to deploy some servers in Germany. So we can bring them up, we can add them to the group, and suddenly we haven't got anything else to do. All of our deployments are just occurring just exactly the same as before. So this allows us to keep it, excuse me. So this allows us then from that single deployment that we're controlling everything. We've got confidence that everything's being installed to exactly the same. So there's no difference between our deployment to cluster A and cluster B because we're applying the whole deployment, everything on it, right across the groups. Okay, and for our final topic, we're just going to talk about deployment at scale. So here, what we've got is like different challenges that might cause us reasons that we need to. So often with a startup environment, what we're trying to do is keep everything lean and only pay for the resources that we really, really need. If we haven't got any customers in the afternoon, we don't want resources in the afternoon. We don't want to use them. What we want to do is be able to scale our systems up and down as we need to be able to do that. And the second issue that might come up is regulated environments. So it's all well and good for some of us to be able to, be able to deploy what we want, but other times we've got compliances that say that we need to be able to demonstrate what we've deployed. So what we can do in high growth environments, so we've got something like we can do horizontal pod adjustment and vertical pod adjustment. So we can look at scaling across different environments, where we do horizontally, or creating as many as possible, or multiple different pods, or we can look at creating something like bigger size things. So we can allocate more resources to our pods and make them larger, so that each individual one can handle more traffic. So it gives us two different ways that we can balance our traffic, and we can manage to make sure that our app is more responsive. Then secondly, we can automate our pipelines. So we can start to use Jenkins, GitLab CI, and other different sort of like workflow tools, essentially, that allow us to make sure that we've got total control over our deployment, and we can prove what's happening at any given time. We can track that, we can find out where it was initialized, just then we can make the changes to our manifests, maybe change the sizes of our pods, and have that roll through, and we've got a change control system that allows us to keep an eye on it all the way. And then secondly, we've got regulatory environments. So this might be healthcare, this might be banking, it might just be personal data that we need to protect. And some of that we need to then demonstrate, and we need to come back to an auditor at the end of the day and show them that we've actually got these checks and balances in place. So for that, what we need to do is to be able to bring some balances into our pipelines. So this might be actions that we bring in GitHub, or approvals and things like that, where we need to say, right, okay, we've got our system deployed to test, yep, we've got it signed off, so someone's going to click on something, and then we're going to push it further and take it from our development environment, and then we're going to push it through our chain until it ends up in production. And then finally, we might have different policies again that we need to enforce, or we need to ensure that we can demonstrate that they're enforced. So we might have role-based access control, network policies, and various security best practices that we need to look at to ensure that we're linking those. So, and then finally, again, as with everything, we need to look at our resource management. So we need to be sure that we're setting our resource usage and resource limits to make sure that we don't over-consume our clusters. So again, some of those tools that we talked about, where we've looked at trying to address these, it's sort of like, it's all well and good if sort of like everything's down, in manifest files and simple, so it makes it more complex. But not everyone's got the time to learn everything all the time. So what we try and do is to create different options that you can interact with the different systems as well. So again, we talked earlier about microservices. So here in our services, we make extensive use of that. Which allows us to then say, right, well, our web interface is just an interface on top of APIs. And our CLI is just an option that uses the APIs. So from that, it gives a complexity, it's from simple on the web to complex at the end. And then we're trying to expose different options to people to give you those features of Kubernetes that you might not necessarily have access to unless you're used to using it all the time. Such as dry run, and try and give you some extra options that we can't do. So like allow you to run some tests beforehand, and give you a chance to estimate the size of your deployment. So how long is it, if I've not got a permanently connected cloud environment all the time, how long is it actually going to take me to deploy my software to this remote site that I've got out on some island or difficult to access? And then again, if we look at things from the DevOps side of things, there's different tools that they might need to add. So they might need sort of like a comprehensive management system that allows users, groups, and access tags to be placed across the system, but also means that they don't have to give any of their users access to the cloud environments. So no need to give them access to AWS, no need to give them direct Kubernetes access. That can all be withheld from them. And they've just got a simple user interface that they can give them. Again, another part of it, like you said, compliance. It's not just always about applying things in the first place. It's also then about what happens to the system once it goes live. So there we start looking at audit trails, keeping a log of everything that everyone does, any changes that apply to the system, when they happen. And then there are a couple of things that sort of like, come in useful in the future, like deployment schedules, and also which might be the ability to schedule rollouts. You want to make sure every Wednesday, 12 o'clock, we push out the new version of the software. So there might be situations where things need to happen at a regular time, or conversely, there might be situations where things need to not happen at a certain time. So in that case, then the schedule can place a block on the system and prevent people from deploying things, such as Christmas Eve, when everyone wants to make sure they can go out and enjoy themselves. And then finally, we have approvals workflows. So another layer on top of it that allows you to get your users and ensure that you understand who's done things, or maybe you've got a client environment that means that you need to make sure that your clients you've got control, or maybe your clients have got control over when that final approval comes and when that software gets deployed to their systems. So what we've got here is just what we've got is we've got a demo of our system that can be this interactive and allows you a chance to use it, and get some experience and see what you think of it. So what we've got here is we're just in a test drive. We'd like you to try. What it'll do is it'll spin up one of our environments for you, allow you to test and use the system, and then we'll give you sort of like a set of instructions on how to use it and things like that. And then what we'd like is your feedback from that at the end. Let us know what you think. And as part of that, what we've got is some Shopee vouchers. So what we'll do is we'll sort of like everyone who gives it a go, we'll run those through and we'll find out which ones there are. So from that, any questions? Oh, sorry. Luca, let me pass over to my colleague for this one.
Good evening. I'm Luca, so I'm head of customer success of K8. Just want to remark a thing. So I'm based in Manila, so I'm here. This is important. So anything you want to discover, you want to ask about K8, I'm more than welcome to assist you and talk about. For us, it's very important to find trial pilots. So we will encourage you to, as Adam said, to test the platform. So please go there, log in, follow the instruction, and give us a feedback. It's very important. We are a young company. We started this journey 5 years ago, working on the services side, health transformation on cloud native from enterprise prospecting. And 2 years ago, we started to develop this platform. So it's available on marketplace, it's there for usage, but what's important, because we are here in the Kubernetes user group, is really the feedback of the hands-on people. So please help us, give us your feedback, try the platform, and let's talk about what is, of course, the feeling. We are looking, of course, to serve enterprise, and the difference between us and what is in the market today is that we are designed for enterprise, not as a segment, but as a policy, as what the company, your company, needs to put in place to manage Kubernetes. So just a few words to say, I'm here to assist you. We are part of the community. We are part of CNCF. We are very active on the community side. We are working also with the colleagues of the Meetup group in Singapore, because our company was born in Singapore. But I say, we are really close to this community. We want to be in touch with you. Please try Cape and tell us what you think. Thank you, guys.
Okay, so with that said then, any questions that anyone's got based around sort of like continuous deployment or anything else on the topics?
I think we have a question from the agency.
Hello, sir. So actually, the idea of the application is actually good because not only it will make the deployment more easier, but it actually package all the deployment areas while adhering to the standard. So my question is more on about the flexibility of K8SUG. So how would you handle specific business user case or per possible client use case scenarios on how would you handle out of the box ideas that they're already adhering to their organization? So how would you handle those kind of scenarios?
Well, we're sort of like leveraging on top of Kubernetes. So as long as you do sort of like manifests or your Helm charts and other ways of deploying, then we're just leveraging all of that on top. So what we're doing is just making it simpler and then making it repeatable and always the same. So it doesn't really matter what you're doing with Kubernetes. It fits straight in under the box. So however you configure it, then we can do that. And again, at that same time, push it out to, so then it's that repeatability. It's that sort of like creating it to a group and then just deploying it to multiple, 1, 2, 20, doesn't matter.
I guess we also have, do you have a follow-up for it? I guess we have another question from the audience.
Good evening. My questions are, what are the key considerations for setting up a blue and green deployment environment? And when it is up and running, how do we ensure a smooth transition of traffic between the blue and green environments?
So this is actually crossing over because your blue greens generally you're looking at what if, what if I change my site in this way? What if I change my site in that way? And how does it affect what completion? So your application might be, okay, I want someone to buy a book, and what you're comparing is if I take path A or path B or path blue, path green, which one results in more completions of my service? That. And then what we're looking at is then sort of like written as, sorry, I'm getting confused with AB, excuse me. So for blue-green, what we're looking at is essentially what you're doing is adjusting the traffic profiles. So we've got them on a single node. What we're looking at is it might be the Nginx, and we've got sort of like a traffic flow coming in, saying direct from 10% to blue, 90% to green, and then changing those. If you've got it externally, you might have it higher up. You might have it at the sort of like either modern systems, you might have a service mesh, which is a more abstract way of separating it. Or say, if you're entirely within AWS, you might have a load balancer, and you'd be adjusting the weighting on that. And that's essentially what it is. You're looking at the load balancer, whether it's Nginx or whether it's an external one, is going to look at that in that split over a period of time. Now that's inbuilt into the system. It might be a 1 minute basis, it might be a 1 minute sliding window, it might be a 5 minute basis. So what you have to do is to make those changes and then wait. It's not going to be instant, it's not going to be continuous, because any session, usually your load balancer is going to be managing session persistence. So when you change the weighting from 50-50 to say 90-10, you're not going to see a response instantly. What you've got to do is wait for all of those sessions that are currently going through to actually finish. And this is one place where people are getting impatient and suddenly start restarting their load balancers, which is just going to result in a bad experience for your clients.
All right. We have another question from the audience there.
Just a follow-up to this question. With your experience, when is the blue-green deployment strategy is beneficial to use, and what are its potential downsides?
So it depends. It really comes down to your confidence on what you're pushing out and how sensitive your customers are to downtime or to rollbacks. So depending on how solid your testing regime is, if you've got a really good automated testing regime, you might skip blue-green and look more at your metrics and rollbacks. But while you're building up your testing, it can be a very useful strategy at that point. You've not got, it always takes getting a full test suite in place always takes a lot longer than getting your code built. So what you've got with the blue-green is it gives you a chance to bring that second one up, start putting some of your traffic over it and watching those metrics. Now, without metrics, none of these are really that useful. They can give you an idea, you can run some testing yourself, but you're not seeing the whole picture. Once you can start to see, like, say, what's your definition of a user activity or a start of a user action and the end of a user action? What are you trying to get them to do? And when you bring that up, is there anything drastic that goes wrong? And that's what you're looking for. So you might start to bring 10% across. you know what actions should happen on that from that time or from looking at the picture above, across all of them. And when you look at that second one, and you start to see, and that's when you start to see different failure and completion, or of what you're trying to do occur. That's when you start to roll back, or if everything's running fine, I'll start to run help with it. So that's it. It depends on your testing maturity and also the willingness of your organisation to go for it or not. So, hope that's useful.
Hi, Shana. So my question would be mostly on how K is able to be deployed in other clusters, because my current idea right now is it would have an agent in each clusters, then it would transfer the data to some kind of master, correct me if I'm wrong. So in some companies or some networks, they're allowed, because they require it to only be in private. So the main server of Cape must be in its own VPC. And the second thing is, if any case the server is hosted from Cape's end, it's going through the internet, or is there a way that can do it?
So obviously, yes, the nodes, we are obviously in this subnet, we would need to use an agent. You need to get traffic between the K8 server and to the client clusters. So what we do is in that case, is like most people, is essentially it's down to HTTPS. So we can either route it over the internet, or it can be routed through private virtual VPNs or dedicated connections. But the key is reducing it down to a single port that that gets things right either way. So and we can have, and it can work in either way. It can be cluster initiated, it can be Cape initiated. So whether the Cape can reach the server or whether the server can reach Cape, there's a connection path that's going there, and from that we can then control the clusters and we can control the deployments.
All right. We have a quick question from someone here. We want to know what was your experience from your first client, first Cape client. I can share, if you can't remember it, maybe an experience like that.
I'm trying to think now. Do you want to pick this one up?
I'm not the technical guy, but okay. Sorry guys, I cannot very deeply on the technical side, but just to give you an idea. We got a very big customer in Portugal. It's the first commercial bank over there. Very advanced in Kubernetes, so they are using almost everything is on the market. They customize heavily one of the famous open source tools that are over there from CD perspective, and they are running for about 400 DevOps inside, so it's a huge organization. What they are looking is to try to cover some gaps. They are currently also the open source tool they are using also is heavily customized and still have in place. And they saw that Cape can fulfill some clear areas of interest. Reducing the one important thing is more the effort of the DevOps team. Because what it's a, Cape is not built to save cost, but it's built to save time. And this is from company perspective is very important because as you know very well, the DevOps team are always overbooked of activity. The queue is unbelievable. And then is the problem is, okay, you need to fulfill tasks and say, okay, I don't have time, and my queue is growing. So using Cape is really to save time. So this bank, starting from looking, for example, in terms of authorization, access control, policy, and all the things that are embedded in Cape, they are not available from open source perspective. And I'm talking about the 2-3 tools, they are very famous, they are running around for about more than 10 years, and they are probably 90% of the market today. So the idea of Cape is to cover this specific area, and the audit portion also from finance perspective is a key point. And and they are using some homemade tool to do this. Like Cape is embedded, so everything is recorded. It's very easy to download. So the area from use case prospecting is really from policy and audit prospecting and authorization. Everything can be integrated for your access control and how you validate the user. And the Cape is important also because we can go to the single developer. So we can group them and we can go to the single developer and understand what they are doing. It's very important for audit prospecting, and this is one. The other one also is all the deployment that Adam showed to you guys. So Cape is able to do almost everything is on the market today with one single click. Or if you like, you can just go through CLI because you are expert and you want to do it. The beauty of Cape is also the fact that the bank recognized it that you don't need all the certified Kubernetes engineers to deploy Kubernetes. Because after the training with Cape, you can use the UI. It's very easy. You click, 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 and you understand how to do it with the right supervision and the, of course, authorization. Every engineer can do this. And you can, of course, remove the effort of the few expert and certified people that are very key in the company, not to do deployment, but to do something more important for the company. And what is more important for the company is to serve better customer. So with new features, new hub, new things that make your customers sticky to you. So this is the idea and the use case we provide to them. And also the easy way to, of course, to jump from one system to another. So as Adam said, it's how we grouping different cluster, different environment, independent you are hosted. You can use AWS, you can use on-prem, you can use any kind of cloud service provider you want, including OpenShift from Red Hat. This is another important system for big organization. So nothing is isolated. Everything can talk each other and can be deployed with few clicks. So if you're talking about policy and enterprise control, if you're talking about how you can manage a multi-cluster environment independently of where you're hosting things, and also now the deployment strategy that is already available there, so you don't need to add any additional tool. I think this is the power of the tool. And the bank was very, very keen to looking into this and compare what currently doing this with a famous open source tool, heavily customized, replace this with Cape. So this is just one scenario. Is a finance scenario, but of course, as we said, we serve many industry. I want to give you some significant, I think it's feedback because of course the bank is very big. Just taking consideration that this bank run more than 100 cluster currently. So it's huge and cross currently on-prem, AWS, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud. So it's really a complex environment, but we can serve everything of this through Cape. Just few words. Sorry guys, I'm not very technical and I go very deeply, but just to give you the flavor and the sense of what we can offer with this tool. Thank you.
Cheers, thank you.
Hello, Adam. Good evening. Thank you for your words and for the sharing. I just want to ask two things. Number one, I saw that Cape can integrate to GitLab, but is it also integratable to GitHub and Bitbucket or any other repositories? Second, is the dashboard from Cape, like reporting dashboard that you can see in Cape dashboard, can be integrated to other reporting like Power BI? Because we don't expect that the higher management will log into Cape and see the dashboard there, right? They have a centralized reporting like Power BI or Tableau. Is it possible or is it in the future stage of it?
So to address the first one, essentially the way we can run with any workflow engine, whether it's something like Bitbucket, whether it's GitHub, GitLab, is we can just integrate with our CLI. So the idea you deploy it and then you can keep that deployment through there. So we can use sort of like a client ID, client secret to authenticate, and then you can run any of the actions from the CLI. So that doesn't limit you to whatever platform. Again, then from an image registry point of view, that can support anything that supports the Docker protocol. So again, we've got a few out of the box, which includes Bitbucket, which includes sort of like ACR, GCR, AWS repositories, as well as sort of like custom defined. So maybe you're using Harbor or something like that. And then again, from the Git side of things, we can support Git and Helm on those Helm repositories. And they can be, it doesn't matter as long as they're running those protocols, whether they're authenticated or public open, they can all be put up. So that's the first one. So what's the second question again?
Sorry, for the reporting, the big bosses, instead of logging in to the K8 dashboard, they have this kind of a centralized reporting like Power BI or Tableau. Does the data from K8 can be ETL going to those reporting platforms?
So while what we're doing is handling essentially the deployment data, we're not actually deep into those sort of like reporting metrics and that kind of thing. But yes, everything can be exposed via the APIs. So there's nothing you can see in the web interface that isn't from the API. Everything, the web interface is just sitting on top. If you use the APIs directly, you can probably do more than what we've exposed in the UI. So from that end of data that's in the system can be pulled out of it, at least as a JSON payload, and then that can be processed and pulled into anything that you want.
All right, do we have any questions here?
Hi, good evening. My name is Sam, and we have a question for you. As we observe, it's more on the corporate scale and mostly enterprises benefit from K. We'd like to know if this can also be utilized as an academic opportunity, like an introductory project to allow students to better understand project deployments.
That's an interesting one. Yeah, we can see what, sort of like certainly join us and have a discussion on that. The key, what we're looking at is not so much enterprise as enterprise features. So it's bringing in that logging, it's bringing in that sort of like audit trail, and the scalable, adjustable authentication and removing that out. So yeah, certainly we'd be willing to have a discussion and talk about that. Yeah.
Does that answer your question? Okay. Do you have any more questions for Adam?
Hello, I'm Gia from Asia Pacific College, and I have a question. If I'm going to create my own startup using Kubernetes, what type of tech stack would you recommend that would fit with Kubernetes?
Sorry, so what sort of?
When I'm planning to create a deployment when it comes to we call this like a startup.
Yeah.
So I was asking a question regarding what would fit when it comes to Kubernetes when you're using tech stack.
To be honest with you, I haven't used text on it. So I don't really know. But sort of what sort of things like manifests and those kind of things, or yeah. So I mean, at the end of the day, it's always a good idea to understand that you can read the manifest yourself, because that's the only way you're going to know what's actually happening. Because you've got to remember, Kubernetes is a desired state system. So it's not like your traditional VMs where you're telling it what you want, and you're telling and programming the systems to the exact item that you want. I want, if we take the security policy, you're saying from A to B over this port. You're not doing that with Kubernetes. What you're doing is you're setting a set of instructions and basically saying to Kubernetes, this is what I would like the system to act like, okay? And that's one of the things you've always got to remember. So getting to understand those, reading those manifests is a good thing. Whatever tool you're using to generate them in the first place, nothing beats having the ability to actually understand it and look at it. Because then you've got a better idea of what you're telling the system to do. Like I say, it's not like traditional interactions, it is just simply a description. Sort of like, essentially anything you're asking is always, I would like you to do, not this is how you do this.
All right, so do you have have other questions for Adam. I think,
Okay, we have a question.
I would like to ask more about the test drive because the test drive has two versions, which is A and B. Is the version A like a sample for deployment? Like if you want a look on your on the application that you want to deploy, then for version 2 or version B would be another sample that you would like to deploy on the like different looks on the versions.
No, they should be absolutely identical. In fact, I wasn't aware that it's two. So I believe that probably we've been making some changes and upgrades to the system. So I suspect that all there is there's just two interfaces to the same back end. But that's it. There's no difference between the test drives. What it does is it gives you a complete environment that we've got. The flexibility is there for you to do it. It's not a demo. It's not a sort of like it's not like a video, an interactive video. It is an instance of the application. So that will come with some instructions that sort of like some scenarios that we've created that walk you through and let you chance to use it. But it's fully featured and there's nothing different between the two.
All right, I guess we could entertain one last question for Adam. Hi, JP. You mentioned a while ago that one of the strengths of KPs you can deploy like on a remote island. And just curious, is that happened already?
No, we haven't, but that's sort of like while we were looking at the use cases in the first place, while we were looking at the product design, what we were doing was talking to lots of different companies about different options. I simply picked that one because the Philippines is a series of lots of islands, but it could easily be, I mean, one of the use cases we did discuss with someone was actually trucking, and sort of like, pushing data down to trucks, which might have sort of like computers on board, and they might not always be connected. They might be intermittent, or they might have limited bandwidth. So what we've got is we've designed a system not always for always-on connections, but also for systems with limited bandwidth and for systems that aren't connected all the time. So inside there we have queuing and prioritization. So once you've set up the deployments, you might have deployments that need to go, well, I need my database before I need my application. So this is a higher priority deployment. This is immediate. Now, most of the time when it's online in your cloud environment, you never ever see that prioritization kick in. It just happens too quick. But if you've got an environment that is, maybe they've only got a 2 meg connection, maybe they're at the end of an ADSL line, or maybe they're ISP or some sort of dial-up. In those cases, then knowing what you want to deploy and how big it is very important, as well as getting an idea of how long it's going to take. So that was the scenarios that we picked it for.
We try also not to work only on cloud to cloud or on-prem to cloud. That is the usual scenario that almost all the company are facing today. But for example, we start to work with some government agency in a completely isolated environment, highly secured network. They are completely disconnected with the rest of the world. And the idea of air gap story is really not only for the remote islands. Of course, they have not a good internet connection, but also because by purpose, the customers or the company or the agency wants to be disconnected for the rest of the world. And the idea of CAPE is not just that it's true they working to agent, it's working to a central system. But the beauty of the platform is that, of course, you can use CAPE as a SaaS product, and this is, of course, on cloud, but you can also install on your home, on-prem, and this is completely isolated. So the idea is you have your private network, you have your private cloud, and you can do this, as also was a SaaS. So the beauty is just to have different systems, and you can apply whatever is your scenario. So it's isolated or it's on cloud, it's fully connected, But this is the idea, of course, of what we built. Just to add a little bit about the beautiful highlands that you mentioned.
All right. Thank you very much, Adam, for the wonderful introduction to K. And also thank you for answering all of our questions.
Thanks very much. Cheers.
Let's give a round of applause for Adam. At this juncture, it's one of the most awaited part of our event. So we'll be having our quiz game to test if nakinig na talaga yung kanina. So I'll be passing the mic to Sir Chris right now, who's going to be hosting this part. And good luck, everyone. Thanks, Vince. So here, I want to see what your key takeaways earlier was. For me, and I was listening to Adam and Luca, what stuck on me was when he mentioned that their tool is not directly to save costs, but to save time so that the developers can do better things and do things that will save costs or even do things that will help them earn more money. So with that, please ready your phone because we're gonna test what your key takeaways are.
Itanggalin mo na natin yung
Please ready your phones and we're just gonna show the QR in a while. We'll give you about 5 minutes to register.
natas naman natin.
So please scan the QR code.
Natas naman natin.
And just to review you on the rules, of course, the answer should be correct, pero yung time nyo to answer is also a factor. So the faster you click the correct answer will give you higher points. So don't wait.
Nangyari.
So we're gonna start
time limit
with
ba
the
siya?
first question now.
Ay, wag mo muna i-start.
Sige, you cue me na lang. Pwede na. Oh, sige, cue mo na lang ako this game.
So,
sige.
Question number 1.
Should I start na ba?
You don't have to wait for me to read. You can answer if you already know the answer.
49. 50. 49 again. Okay na ba? Should I start?
50?
Yeah. Should I start?
Number 1. How does K simplify progressive delivery? By removing the need for monitoring hooks, by replacing CI/CD pipelines, with built-in deployment strategies and intuitive web UI, by eliminating multi-cluster challenges.
Next question na kagad.
And we have 31 participants with the correct answer.
Siya na lang mag-focus sa'yo.
Congratulations. So, question number 2, let's start. Which of the following components is required for Kubernetes network policies to be enforced? Kube scheduler, Kube controller manager, network plugin, example, Jericho, Cilium, or Kube API server. Keyword for Kubernetes network policy. So network plugin, 22, 24, correct answers. So moving on with question number 3. What feature does K provide for multi-cluster deployment? Manual traffic routing, native audit trails and authentication workflows, port for and integration with different services, cloud providers and environments, or elimination of CI/CD pipelines.
Currently leading is Alen, Shaton, Andrea, and Jason Pamitan. Oh, good job. You have 58 correct answers. Moving on with question number 4. What is the primary purpose of a Kubernetes network policy? To define pod resource limits like CPU and memory, to control network traffic to and from pods, to manage the scheduling of pods and nodes, to automate the deployment of applications in Kubernetes. So, what is the primary purpose of a Kubernetes network policy? The answer is to control network traffic to and from pods. 47 correct answers. So moving on to question number 5. When a network policy is applied to a pod, what happens to traffic that does not match any rules? It is allowed by default, it is loud and allowed, it is denied by default, or it triggers a failover to another pod. Then, when a network policy is applied to a pod, what happens to traffic that does not match any rule? Correct answer is it is denied by default. So, question number 6. Which Kubernetes component helps ensure secure deployments in regulated environments? Horizontal pod autoscaler, RBAC and network policies, Fluentd for cross-cluster logging, or Jenkins pipeline. So, which Kubernetes component helps ensure secure deployments in regulated environments? The correct answer is RBAC and network policies. 36 correct participants. Moving on to question number 7. Which tool can be used for traffic management during Canary or blue-green deployments? Jenkins, Prometheus, Istio or Nginx, or Open Policy Agent? Which tool can be used for traffic management during Canary or blue-green deployments? Blue is Service Mesh. So the answer is Istio or Nginx. Question number 8. What makes it user-friendly for developers? Eliminates the need for CLI tools, intuitive to use with versatile access options, web, CLI, and API, removes compliance requirements for deployments, or simplifies networking between clusters. What makes it user-friendly for developers? Correct answer is intuitive to use with versatile access options. Good job, 50 correct participants. So moving on to the second to the last question. What is the function of the pod selector field in a Kubernetes network policy? To define the target namespace for the policy, to specify the pods the policy applies to limit access to Kubernetes cluster resources, or to ensure high availability for the targeted pods. What is the function of the pod selector field in a Kubernetes network policy?
Ba't nakakasali kayo? Hindi ako kasali.
Correct answer is to specify the pods the policy applies to. Good job to those 26 participants. So our top three is Kat Notado, Neil Darren Sulit, and Jason Pamitan. And here's the last question. What does a default deny network policy in Kubernetes do? It allows all network traffic unless explicitly denied, automatically denies all external traffic but allows internal pod communication, blocks all network traffic unless explicitly allowed, or disables all ingress and egress traffic in the cluster permanently. Default denied. Correct answer is it blocks all network traffic unless explicitly allowed. So our top three is Kat Notado, Allen, Siaton, Neil, Daryl, Subi. Please come to the front. Please come to the front yung top three.
Picture.
So, Neil is waiving the 6-month code cloud access to the port. Si L ay nanalo na din daw.
Double F.
Okay. So it is again waived to the fifth winner, Jason Pamitan. So have you won previously then, sir?
First time ko lang.
Okay. So it's yun na talaga. Please come to the front na lang yung top 8. May t-shirt din yung iba. Please come to the front yung iba po. Can you also call our sponsors for the picture taking? So again, we want to thank our sponsor, PeakMind, for sponsoring our event. Again, congratulations to all of you. Please reach out na lang for your prizes. Yung mga t-shirts pala, ngayon yun na kunin din. Dito kay Miss KM na din.
All right, thank you once again. Thank you very much everyone for attending our third Kubernetes Users Groups Meetup. Again, I would like to thank our sponsor, DeepMind, for trying to market the product K, and also to AWS Web Services for always supporting us, providing us with a venue, and hopefully we will see each other again in the fourth meetup. So stay tuned within the next meetings or our social media links for you to be occupied with which or when will be the next meetup. Just last request na lang pala. We want to take a picture with all of you sa AWS logo sa labas. So if you are able, if we can all take a picture to honor this commemorative event, so we highly appreciate it.
Once again, thank you very much for attending our event, and hopefully we'll see you all again in the next events in the future.